Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tips, tools, and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. Welcome back, everyone. Today I have guest Isabeau Maxwell. Isabeau is an internationally recognized medium and spiritual coach who has helped people all over the world connect to their authentic, natural, intuitive abilities for nearly 20 years. Isabeau is the founder of the award-winning intuitive development course called The Sage Method, and is also the author of the best-selling book, Cracking Open: Adventures of a Reluctant Medium. With a degree in mathematics and a minor in chemistry, Isabeau maintains a balanced perspective between this world and the next. Welcome, Isabeau. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me on.
So you and we're going to dive into imagination or intuition, developing a strong and accurate intuition. So this is kind of the perfect time for us to have this dialogue because we have just moved into a new calendar year. And this is where we start to create and design, right, the year ahead. And many of us imagine what we would like our lives to look like. But when we link it with our intuition, our lives can become magical and effortless. So Isabeau, let's start off with what is the difference between imagination and intuition?
That is one of the most popular topics because everyone I've ever spoken to who has been working to use their intuition has said, did I make that up?
Yes.
Was that real or did I make it up? And I do want to throw out too, this year is a very powerful year energetically as compared to the previous years. And maybe, a little later in the session, we can get into like what, I've picked up on intuitively, what's coming for people this year, what they can expect. We can touch on that in a little bit. But for right now, imagination versus intuition is a big one. And the first thing I want to tell people is it takes time, but it's possible. It takes time and practice to be able to figure out when it's a push or when it's a pull. That's what I tell people to start with. When something happens to you, do you feel as if you were actively participating and pushing it to come to your vision or to your, to your feelings? Or did it come out of nowhere? Did it pull you in a different direction that you weren't planning on being pulled in? That's really the difference. It's a push or a pull. And I also tell people it's okay to use your imagination just long enough to get you into some like a meditative state. Imagine going into a field, imagine feeling the grass, imagine seeing birds fly over. Perfectly fine to use your imagination and then hold still, inviting your intuition to come in. That's when it'll come in, something will show up and you'll go, oh, that's what it feels like. That's the best way to learn the feeling between the two, is start with purposely imagining something and then hold still, asking your intuition to come in. And when it does pop in, you can feel that difference. And in time, you'll know. You won't be asking yourself questions anymore about, did I make it up or not?
Yeah, because you'll feel this inner knowing. I know in the beginning, I was like that. Like, did I just make that up in my mind? How did I know that information? Where did that come from? And then understanding I have very powerful claircognizance, and that information would just come to me. And then I would trust that it's truth. And I know for me, I get goosebumps. So I know that's like my body telling me, hey, listen up. There's some information coming to you that is valuable. And so Isabeau, how do we use both our imagination and our intuition together to create things in our lives?
You can really set a stage. So if you're looking to access intuitive information, you can set a stage. There's actually two big techniques that I teach in my courses. One is what I just introduced, which is setting a stage. Imagine walking into a theater or feel what it feels like to sit down in that theater chair, because not everyone is visual. Some people just know and they just get that understanding. And there's no right or wrong way. Everyone's intuition is different. And once you get on board with that, then stuff starts opening up. I got to tell you, a big block for people is trying to do it the way someone else does.
Yes.
And then they run into that roadblock and they're like, well, I'm not intuitive. Actually, you are, just differently than what you were trying. So feel or imagine sitting in a theater chair and there's a big stage in front of you and the curtains just open up, knowing that whatever's behind there is for your intuition to show you, things like that. Or imagine yourself in a big empty room and intuitive feelings come in, and then those feelings will show you. There's going to be days where nothing's on the stage, you don't feel anything in that empty room, but then there's going to be days where you do. And it's perfectly fine to set up that platform. The other big one that I had mentioned was to really kind of disconnect from this agreed upon reality. Some people are great in trance state, and I suggest everyone tries this, to defocus your vision, your human vision. We've got human vision and spiritual vision. Defocus that human vision by relaxing your eyesight so it's not landing on anything physical. And I tell people, so you'll get this. Most everyone I say get that. When you've seen something out of the corner of your eye. Right?
Oh, I do it all the time.
Right?
Yes.
And then you turn and you look and nothing's there. And it's frustrating. It's like, I know something's in here. The reason the reason there's nothing there when you turn and look is because out of habit, your human mind is turning and looking at the wall, the table, the chair. You're actually searching the material items in your room. But what happened was you saw something out of the corner of your eye because it was in your peripheral, which is defocused. Everything we are looking for is in between. It's not in the physical. So when we let go of looking at the physical and focusing on the physical, we actually open the floodgates to getting way more information. So that's the other one that I love telling people is sit in front of a wall and just focus in the space in between you and the wall. So your eyes just relax and defocus, and then, let your intuition express itself. You'll be really surprised.
You really will. I love that. I just learned the eye softening recently. That was something that I have been practicing, and I do a lot of extraterrestrial stuff, Sasquatch stuff, elemental stuff, all this really fun stuff. And I've got a group of people, we go out and we actually practice these skills. And some of us will be able to see things in our mind's eye, where others of us will feel. Like the other day I went out on just a little hike with a friend, and we were feeling the energies around us. We were in the middle of the woods and we were just feeling heat. It was like this massive heat around us. Now, neither one of us were tuning into anything visual, either outside in our human sight or our spirit sight, but we were both picking up on the goosebumps and something touching the back of my head, and, the heat on both of us in our hands. And so I love that you bring this up, that not everyone feels things, sees things, hears things, all at the same time, or even in the same frequency for that matter. And it's so important to just listen to your own intuition and tap into your own clairs and your own senses and see, how do you receive information? Because it's all very different. My sister's very clairvoyant and I'm not. I'm very clairsentient, clairaudient. So, but it's neat when we get together because it's almost like we create a human body.
Because she can see. You've got all the senses working between the two of you. Like she can, see stuff and you can hear it. And it's one of the biggest roadblocks that's out there. And sometimes pop culture can tell us these things. Pop culture can tell us that certain people are gifted, that intuition is a gift. It's not. I'm sorry to step on anyone's toes. It's not a gift. It's not. It's a sense. It's a natural sense that we all have. But because we're not actively, consistently migrating to keep up with animals and food and hunting and all that kind of stuff, we don't need it. We have everything at this point in one hand in a cell phone. So we really don't need our intuition to guide us. So we don't use it. And it's stagnant and blocked. The second somebody figures out, okay, mine works uniquely to me, then it starts, once the floodgates open, it just opens, it opens, it opens. And I'm really adamant about teaching that way. The SAGE method is structured so you have these tools to try that will open it up the way it opens up for you, not for someone else. Not like, look at this, what do you see? That's what happened to me. I did a whole bunch of psychic classes when I opened up, because I opened up, I was 31, complete skeptic. My grandmother shows up in my living room in spirit form hours after she passes away,
That's
scares
how
the
mine happened too.
absolute scared the absolute
Oh,
crap
grandma.
out of me. Like, it was no, 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 no. And so here I sit, type A, Taurus, just non-believer skeptic. And all of a sudden now I have faced with this. And I started going to classes to see, okay, is this real? How do I strengthen this? And all of the classes I went to, they were like, here, read this. And I'm like, could you tell me how?
Yeah, you're like, teach me, teach me.
You teach me, like, how does this work? What should it, like, how do I hold myself? And none of them did that. And it was actually my first spirit guide who taught me everything I know about intuition, and then turned around and said, put this together and bring it out in the world so everyone else can try these things. And then that's how the Sage Method started.
That's amazing. And I want to talk about the SAGE method later on in the show. And so, Isabeau, how do we access our intuition? Are there some simple tools for those out there who have disconnected from this beautiful sense that we all have, or even those who are connected to it? How do we strengthen it?
Well, that defocus is huge. I encourage everyone to play around with that. Even if it's 5 minutes a day, consistency means something in your spiritual path. It really does. It's not quantity, though. People can sometimes think, I have to spend an hour or 2 hours a day. No, 1 3-minute session a day is just as powerful to anchor into your spiritual path as anything else. Your spiritual path doesn't function on linear time or quantity or judgment. So just acknowledging it once a day is that alone will start opening things up for you. But if you did that defocus once a day for 2-3 minutes and just say, however my intuition wants to come through, I let it come through, and then feel what happens, just be real open to however it comes through, you'll start to develop those signs and those messages. And I also encourage people to kind of play around, not test, but play around and experiment with their intuition by purposely asking yes and no questions, because those are so opposite that they're easier. Like you said, you get the goosebumps. You could ask a question, and if the answer was no, you'd get goosebumps with no, but you wouldn't get goosebumps with the answer yes. I encourage people to start there. That's how I started. I know that I opened up and here I am today. I've been a professional medium for years and I'm teaching people all over the globe. I get that. But when I started, it took me like a year to really be able to do like a full intuitive session with somebody. I sat there with a pendulum swinging, yes and no, learning what yes meant and learning what no meant. And there's no magical creatures, and we all have to slowly open up our intuition. But yes and no is a great way to start.
It really is. And, that's probably how I started too. I worked in the healthcare field around death and loss a lot. So I was seeing a lot of earthbound spirits and a lot of shadow beings and things out of my peripheral vision, and chairs flying across the room in my office, and, all these things when I was there late at night. And at the time I lived in Daytona, Florida. So I was near Casadega, which is a little spiritual village there in Florida. And so I didn't know where to turn. I was like, I'm seeing things. I'm going to go to this little village and see if I can find someone to answer some of my questions. And when I got there, I met some really beautiful people that kind of guided me in the right direction, said, here's some books, and, here, practice this, and maybe learn about Reiki, and, all these things. So I look back at my early years in my journey and I just laugh, because I was like this little lost little puppy, like, I'm seeing things and I don't know why and where, but I look back at my childhood, and at that time I had the ability to talk to animals. I saw spirits. I called them they were my friends, and so I think as time went on, I started to close those gifts or those abilities, those senses off. And, then, in my early 30s, it started to turn on too. And lo and behold, grandma shows up and you're like, oh, what are you doing here? And
what are
mine
you
came through
doing
in a
here?
psychic reading. Grandma came through in a psychic reading.
Yes. those grandmas, I can't tell you how many people I have met that a grandmother kicked them right on into this path. And I'm telling you, they are beautiful, beautiful women. I love them so much. But I'm relating deeply to what you're saying. I also want to kind of share with the listeners the variety of experiences people can have, because you had a lot of experiences as a kid. I didn't have imaginary friends. There was one thing that I remember when I was like 8 years old at my grandma's house once, and that's it, you know? So just because somebody's been extremely closed off, like this lady here, up to 31.
That's your Taurus stubbornness,
It's
Isabeau.
a stubbornness. Oh, yeah, I'm telling you. I laugh at the Taurus videos, those funny videos that come through that like make fun of Taurus, because I'm like, dang it, every time it's accurate. So but it's fun. It's fun. But it's different for everyone. And then I too, you know, opened up. Here I was, like, I was running businesses. No one in my circles was in the spiritual realms or world. And I had recently run a fitness and health center, and I knew that there was a Tai Chi guy that I had hired for that place. So I hunted him down.
Like, maybe this guy knows something.
Yeah, exactly. This was me, like, going, I don't know where to turn. And he's the nicest man on the planet, because I went up to him, and I'll never forget that I said this now that I'm a little you know, more understanding about everything. And I remember walking up to him going, okay, you're the weirdest guy I know. Can you help me? And he laughed. He wrapped his arm around me and said, I gotcha. Come on. Well, and he helped me with the yes and no's, the defocus. And then I started communicating with my guide, and then I took off from there. But yeah, you need community. You need community. You need other people that you can say that sentence. This might sound weird, but you need people that you can say that sentence to. And that's, you know, I created the Sage Circle, the online community. It's literally for people to be able to connect with others.
You do. It's so important, because I had no one in my circle that would even believe what I was going through. Actually, I say I had one friend, but she was kind of closed off a little bit to it. Now she's very open, but at the time, my whole family, people are like, do you need an intervention? Like, what's wrong with you? You know? And I'm like, no, I'm just seeing shadows, and I'm feeling energy coming through me, and I'm receiving these downloads of information. And I want to talk about that, Isabeau, what the difference is between channeling and intuition, because I think when we start to open up at least for me, I started to open up my crown chakra on my third eye, all this information was coming through, and I'm like, who's that voice? You know, who is that? Me? Who is that? What is that? And my clairaudience was really kicking up. I could be sitting in a room and I would hear music, you know, when I know no one was playing music, I could hear things, and I'm like, that doesn't even sound like this era music. Like, what is that? So, you know, let's talk a little bit about that, because I think when you do start to open up, you know, these senses, it can be a little scary at times. You know, it's at 3 a.m. and you're like hiding under your covers because there's an apparition at the end of your bed saying, hi, you know, you can help me cross over. And I'm like, no, I can't. Go away.
No, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. For me, yeah, it was my grandmother first. And it took me months to really let myself accept that it was real. And it took a significant amount of proof to get this Taurus on board. And once that proof came through, it was undeniable. I said, okay, I'm on board. I love you. This is exciting. And then all of a sudden I realized, wait, this is real. This means I have my grandmother 24/7. I was like so excited, because she was like my mom. And she's just as stubborn as me. So when she was alive, if she didn't want to talk on the phone, she'd take it off the hook, and then it was busy all day and you couldn't get through to her. And I'm like, you can't take the phone off the hook now, can you, lady? Like, I have a direct
like, neither can you at 3 a.m.
Yeah, I can talk to you when I need to. So a few months after that, all excited, happy to have her. I'm in a grocery store, and all of a sudden there's deceased people in the aisle that I'm in. And I ran. I panicked, because that was not in my game plan. Like, that wasn't what I was thinking. And I remember my grandmother going, well, what did you expect? And I was like, this is a hard thing to transition into. And I was wise enough to get therapy. I was wise enough to find somebody that could help me through this. And he said something very, very intelligent that stuck with me. Everyone can handle anything as long as they have a context. So the way he explained it to me is, you've spent your entire life with no greenery outside, no green grass, no leaves on trees. And then you woke up one day and you walk outside and everything's green. It's going to freak you out. But eventually you realize that's just grass. Those are just leaves on the tree. So anyone that does have those fears, I tell them, deep breathing, hang in there, you'll adjust, and it's going to be fine. But yeah, opening up can be a wild transition. And as far as channeling goes, one thing that I wanted initially opening up was a solid dictionary of terms that actually everyone agreed on. I was really hoping that existed, only to find out it doesn't. So
oh, there it's in the Akashic record somewhere.
Yeah, it's somewhere up in the, like, whoever created the Akashic records, they didn't put in the pages in the books of many people all together agreeing on terms for spiritual things. And channeling falls into that category. Channeling is one of those things where if you talk to one person, it's something. If you talk to somebody else, it's completely different. And so I approach channeling as an umbrella. In essence, really what you could say is that any intuitive information coming through is channeling through your intuitive channel. So every time we're intuitive, we are indeed channeling. If we go all the way to the movie Ghost, channeling is a whole different thing, where Whoopi Goldberg is channeling an entire spiritual being. And that's possible as well. So people really have to kind of decide where their definition is for channeling. I tend to just say it really all is channeling.
Yeah, I feel the same way, because, now at first I thought it was another being coming through me, but now I realize it's a fractal of me. It's a higher version of me coming through. And I feel so much more comfortable with that, knowing that, this is me in another frequency or in a parallel reality, or however you want to grasp that concept. But I feel much more comfortable, and I can use my clairs, my senses, to kind of feel into it and get a sense for what frequency is this coming in, at, and where is that? Because that's really pertinent as well.
It really is. I mean, all of our lives are all happening at once. So when we look at our existence here, our existence is like a series of photographs. It's, that's what our timeline is. And every photograph, we have the option to step into this photograph or that one or this one or that one. I mean, the creating of your path in this timeline is really remarkable if you think about it in those terms. But we here are on a linear timeline. Linear time does not exist on the other side. On the other side, your higher self is witnessing and experiencing all of your lives completed in an instant.
Like an octopus.
So
right? It's like the head and then all these little
it's just like it's all happening at once. So all of your past lives are all happening right now. All of and so they're not back to back. You pass and then you come back. And I understand that that's a great analogy and a great teaching, but to take it really to that next level, diving kind of a little bit closer into physics, because you can imagine I love science, but they're all happening at the same time. So we can get channeled information, guidance from source, universe, loved ones on the other side, our higher self on the other side, guides, our other lives that are concurrently happening with us right now. It's really a wavelength if you line up all of your lives all at the same time. And then just to throw another spinner in there, there's no limit to the number of lives you have.
It's infinite. And, based off of our own frequency, we can shift it. I talk about this a lot, transurfing, reality transurfing, and, just really focusing your energy on what reality, do I desire? What reality do I want to create? And shifting literally your frequency and your focus and your intention towards that. And so I'm noticing a lot of movies coming out that are touching on this as well. And I'm not, it's kind of funny. I don't watch a lot of television, but I perk up when there's certain ththings that I'm like, let's see how they portray this. And I know Marvel movies do this a lot. There's a new movie coming out, The Flash, and I saw this little 30-second thing, and he actually meets up with another version of himself, and I thought, oh my gosh. And there's another one with
There
Ryan
it is.
Reynolds. I think it's called The Adam Project, I think, and he does the same. It's a future version of himself comes back to a childlike version of him. And there's another one on
Yes.
Hallmark I just watched, The Way Home, and she jumps into a pond and goes and sees her mom at her age and all this. And so I'm recognizing just the collective psyche is starting to talk a little bit more about this parallel realities and timeline shifting. And I think it's awesome because I'm like, we all have the ability to do this. It's just overcoming those limited belief systems that we don't, right?
It is. It's opening up to the possibilities that are there. And this is also why community is so important and learning is so important, because everything you learn, every course you take, or every, a group you connect with, people you hear different things from, bring it into your system, take what works and leave the rest behind. Absolutely 100%. I'm not a big fan about like diehard guru following and things like that as well. Get the tools and create your own path. But all of these things, every time we hear something, it opens it up a little bit more. You had mentioned earlier, like alien connection, and that you interact with some of those realms. I recall, and I'm not going to get the numbers or dates correct here, of course, but I do recall I hung out with a bunch of friends that were really into, ETs and the, all of that information. It's not my realm, but they were really into it. And they were talking about how in New Hampshire, couple years ago, there was a sighting. And when you're driving somewhere, like especially in a woodsy, beautiful area, and you see 3 or 4 cars pull over and you think, it's a moose, I'm going to pull over. I'm going to see a moose, right? And so what do? You pull over because they're looking at something and it's going to be beautiful, right? So that's what happened. Like 10 cars ended up pulling over. They all got out. A portion of the people saw an actual UFO and they were able to confirm with each other that it all looked the same for each of them, but a portion of the people couldn't see it. It was right there, not even a football field length away, right in the open, and a portion of the people couldn't see it. And this is a really good example of how important it is to be open to possibilities, because you are not going to see things, you're not going to experience things if you don't let yourself have that possibility.
Yeah, and that's where that softening gaze comes in as well, too, Isabeau. It reminds me of, I think it was the 80s or the 90s. They used to have those 3D pictures that,
yes,
you remember those where you would see
the
image, but then if you really softened your gaze, you could see a more third dimensional image inside of it. That's what it reminds me
I think
of.
it was called Magic Eye.
Yes,
I might be wrong, but I think it was something like that.
Nostalgia here, but that's what it reminds me of. Like some people could see that image in there, that third dimensional image, where others could not, right?
Yeah.
And the harder you looked, the harder it was to see it.
Exactly. And just being open to all of the possibilities, And the other thing too is to not lose track of the human stuff. I have a lot of students. I've been teaching for a lot of years. I'm just going to age myself right there. A lot of years. And I'll have students that go through the course. They really supercharge their intuition. Their channel's really open. They have a lot of intuitive experiences. And then they'll reach out to me months later and say, my intuition's gone. Where did it go? And it's like, okay, what's going on? Have you done any practices? Have you just even acknowledged each morning that you're a spiritual being? And they're like, no, I kind of fell away from that because of either a marriage or a divorce or moving or things like this. When we have a lot of human stuff going on, our intuition's going to dull. And I tell people, don't worry. All we need to just get back into the practices. That's where the reminder that you're a spiritual being is so important, because what you put your focus on is really what you're going to be able to experience. And for those people that did see the UFO the number of years back in New Hampshire, they've put their focus on that. they've opened up to the possibility that that could be real.
Yeah. And I recognize that because there's times when I was really into paranormal stuff and I was really attracting a lot of paranormal stuff. Well, then I backed
Mhm.
off and started to shift my focus more towards manifesting and law of attraction. Well, then I started attracting different things. And then I switched my focus over here to something else. And I began to notice that the things I used to focus on started to kind of fade away a little bit and other things started to come into my reality. And so we're so powerful, right? We're such powerful creator beings. And if we stay focused on one thing all the time and then we complain that this is our life, we have the ability to shift our energy, our intention, and our focus towards something different. And I think that's important for people to kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit and learn a little bit about that, because it can transform your life. And I know for me, I use it as a science experiment. It's like, okay, I'm gonna try
Yes.
this today and see what I can focus on and see what actually pops into my reality. And it's really fun.
Yes. And I, I do love kind of balancing myself between like science and spirituality. And so one thing that I found that's really helpful for my students is for them to understand partially how the brain works when it comes to this stuff too, because some of this is the brain patterning, and you're inviting the brain to shift with you and bring that focus in. Because in essence, without using a whole bunch of big terms or anything, in essence, we're absorbing like millions of bits of information each second. We have a gatekeeper in our brain, like right in the back there, we've got a gatekeeper. And that gatekeeper, in essence, that is the job of the brain, to allow in only like 20 to 30 bits of information out of those millions.
Which is
This is
not much at
why
all.
it's not much at all. It's very little. I think if let everything in, our brain would explode. So, but this is why when you're going to buy a new car, let's say you're like, that's it, I'm going to go buy a Corvette. For the next 3 days, you will see 700 Corvettes on the road. And you're like, that's so weird. It's not weird. It's your brain. That's the gatekeeper. And you know what you did? You said to the gatekeeper, this is my focus. You said to the gatekeeper, I am manifesting right now. You said to the gatekeeper, and this is what I tell people, try this. And your listeners should try this. For the next 7 days, every morning, I want you to tell the gatekeeper in your brain, I receive strong signs all the time. And then I want you to just buckle up and watch the signs come in, because they do. And I appreciate dipping my toe into something to kind of test it out. And I encourage people to do that. I'm not a jump in believer kind of person. I need to kind of explore a little bit and tell the gatekeeper what you want to focus on that day, whether it's manifesting or signs. I actually just got out of a very human time. We were stuck in travels and I couldn't move forward to the next place.
And you had
It's a long
hurricanes
story.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. Yep, we got out of the Florida from the hurricane, and then there was like the ice storms and stuff. So we finally got back into our travel pattern. Very grateful. And I thought, wow, I feel very disconnected. So I did exactly what I just asked your listeners to do. I said, I get strong signs all the time. The very next day, I was hanging out with 2 friends, and we were taking photos. And the one friend said, I was standing up. She said, lean forward on your feet so your whole body angles, kind of like Michael Jackson's video, Annie, are you okay? And I'm like, oh, Annie, are you okay? Great. I mean, hours later, I got into a shuttle, and they turned the shuttle on and the radio turned on, and Annie, are you okay is playing.
Oh, see, yeah.
Right? That's what I mean. And they don't have to even mean anything. It's just a way for you to say, I get signs that tell me that I'm linked in. That's it.
It is. And it can be so powerful. I know last week I had overbooked myself. And by Wednesday, I was kind of, like, oh man, I kind of wish I had Friday available. And I had someone booked that day. And on Wednesday, I woke up that morning and I just visualized myself having Friday free and not having something going on that day. Well, it was really funny. I reached out to the guest that was supposed to be on my show on Friday, and he responded, Tanya, I am so sorry, but I'm going to have to reschedule because I'm traveling, you know. And I thought, and I think he felt as if he was letting me down, but I immediately said, oh no, I know I manifested this because I have been feeling like I was overbooked. And so he ended up rescheduling to Monday, which allowed me more time to put the show together. And so I was very grateful of that. But I just giggled because I know I created that. Like I created that. And
Yep.
it was effortless, but I also wasn't attached to the outcome. I was kind of like, you know what? If he cancels, he cancels. If he doesn't, he doesn't. Or if that day frees up, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It is what it is. And I stepped away from it. And within 2 hours, it was clear, you know? So
Yes.
I know, you know, that was a validation for me that, wow, I can manifest things, you know, and the universe showed me a strong sign right there that I can do that.
A strong sign. And I love that. I love the releasing and letting it go. That's really powerful because then you're giving the universe more ways that it can bring it to you. That's really powerful. But the one thing I just wanted to throw out too is for people to know that not every sign has to necessarily mean something. You can get more signs that are kitschy and neat and connective like that simply to remind you of how you're creating your reality. And I recall one a little while ago, I was talking to one of my team members, and we were trying to come up with a name for one of the specialized courses I teach. And it ended up being traversing your past lives. I was trying to come up with the word traversing. So I'm sitting there talking to him, and I said, you know, and this will age me too, but remember Carmen Sandiego?
Of course. Yes.
I'm like, you know, like Carmen Sandiego, what she did across the globe. And they were like, traversed. I'm like, yes, that's it. That's the word of the course. Not even an hour later, I wrap up, I sit down, I turn on Netflix, and it gives me a suggestion of literally the cartoon Carmen Sandiego. And I was like, that's from the 80s. The synchronicities can just be off the chart. And so don't even ask for them. Just say, I get strong signs all the time.
Command it in to your reality. And so, Isabeau, since we're on the topic of signs and synchronicities, what are your thoughts about number sequences? And I really even haven't even done a show on this. I mean, I've shared my little tidbits on what I think it is, but what are your thoughts on this, being a highly intuitive person?
It really, when you have the signs that come through, and it can be numbers that are 1111, 222, all of that type of things, that's you paying attention to, in essence, the code. This entire reality is built on a code, and we're walking through it. I mean, numbers are just so delicious for me, as you can imagine, as a mathematician. But there's a lot of power in how the code is built around numbers. Sacred geometry is absolutely incredible and absolutely beautiful. So when you see a number, in essence, most of the time, it's going to mean that you're linked in. That your focus is more on your spiritual body than on that human mind, right? That programmed sort of human mind. But sometimes these signs can be, hey, somebody's thinking about you, or somebody on the other side is trying to get your attention, or you need to stop and think through what's going on right now, or yes, what you were just thinking is it. So you can see where the yes and no intuition comes in, right?
Yes.
When you see a sign through a number, and it can be repeating numbers, it can be the number of a birth date of a loved one or a death date or something like that. It can just be your favorite number. You know, my favorite number is 273. I don't know why. I don't remember how I started that years ago, but now here it is. So when I see 273, I go, ooh, I'm on track. There it is. I'm on track. So most times it'll let you know you're on track, but sometimes it is a way for your guides or loved ones or source to say, hey, pay attention. Pay attention.
Yeah, and it's true, because my number is 444. I see it all the time. I see it everywhere. It's ridiculous. It's blasting in my face all the time. But funny, I would get around people that would see 333 all the time. And then I'd leave their presence, and then I'd start seeing 333. And then they'd say, hey, I'm seeing 444 now. And so it's really funny because it's almost like a little a little activation code exchange or something like that. And so it's fun to play around with them. And I've even broken them down. It's like, okay, let's break them down into a single digit and see what that, what that means. And so when you said your number was that, I'm like calculating, oh, it's a 3. That's broken down to a 3. And so
Yeah.
it's so funny because I start to, and I wasn't even a big math person in school, but for some reason now, when it comes to numbers, I'm just calculating things in my mind. And I do see sacred geometry oftentimes with number sequences. And, I'd love to even do a full show on this because I know people are like, why am I getting these numbers? But I'm glad that you kind of mentioned it's very unique and selective to the individual. And I feel it's an intention for me. It's like, okay, when I see this 44 on the clock every hour, I can't imagine I'm looking at the clock every hour and it has 44 on it, but I know that I'm on the right path. I'm in alignment with where I need to be. And so that's kind of what I've set that intention on that particular number and what that means for me. But 44 could mean something else to someone else, and very
Exactly.
different.
And I've had moments where I remember recently driving down the road and having some anxiety over like the direction we were going and are we traveling on the right day? I travel constantly, so are we traveling on the right day kind of thing? And I was just having anxiety, and I'm in the passenger seat. I turned to look out the window. The next mile marker we pass 273, and I'm like, I'm okay. That was a sign that said, hey, you know what, you're okay. But again, I wake up in the morning and I say, I am a conscious creator. Everything always works out for me. And of course I'm getting signs. I get strong signs all the time. That's me buddying up with my gatekeeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's fantastic, And so Isabeau, let's talk a little bit about the SAGE method and what it is. And I want to learn more.
The SAGE method is not anything that I would have ever predicted. I mean, before all of this happened, and someone said to me 22 years ago, this is where you're going to be, I would be like, okay, you're cute. I'm going to exit this gift shop and go somewhere else. But here I am. So like I had mentioned, my main teaching guide, I lovingly call him Big Dog. I worked with him for almost 2 years, and I would go out and I would learn and I journaled and I would try the things that he told me to do. And it was over those 2 years that I became a professional intuitive. I was taking clients, I was doing clearing work, healing work gradually, but he was the one that got me there. After 2 years went by, I now had a number of clients and I was pretty busy. And he said to me, I want you to take everything that I taught you and put it together and bring it out into the world for people. And I was, we can be just naive sometimes. I was like, well, why? Like, teaching's not in my realm anywhere. Yeah. It's never been in my realm. And he said, because if you can do this, anyone can. That's why you're doing it. And I was like, wow, I am your poster child for going from 0 to 100. Got it. Okay. And I say that with absolute love. I really say that with love, but that's what happened. So I worked with him and I got all the main core things that he really wanted done. I was able to condense it down to 7 weeks. I couldn't get it any shorter than that, but 7 weeks. And in essence, it's a 7-week exploration on everything that's blocking you and every technique that you can try to really kind of craft and develop the best way to hold your intuitive channel. And by the end of 7 weeks, you know how your intuition works. And now I get to just be the person witnessing that happening to people. And it is the coolest thing ever, ever. I mean, every single time, still to this day, when a student, reaches out and says, I can't believe this. I did the experiments in week 7. I can't believe this. And I'm like, I know. And then we get to have that moment together where it's like, yeah. And so I'm very fortunate in that, and I'm very happy about it. But in essence, it's the course that teaches you the how it works, why it works, and gives you the tools to figure out how to align them with your unique intuition.
That's really neat. And I know how that feels when you start to see things working out. And when I
Yeah.
first started my remote viewing training, they did a spoon bending exercise where it was basically telekinesis. You know, we were all on there on Zoom and we all focused on our spoon, and mine bent just a little bit. And I'm like, I did it, you know, but it was neat to watch other people. Their spoons were really bending, you know, and it gives you confidence, you know, especially when you're in a group setting like that, because it gives you confidence to say, hey, you have that really cool sense. Let me see if I can turn that on too, you know, and it just makes it really fun. It's like a little group setting, like you're in school.
Well, yeah. And for you and everyone witnessing it, now it's possible.
Yeah.
Now it's possible. And I still remember the one reading I did as a professional intuitive in the beginning that was that I it was one of the biggest, it was the biggest hit that I had gotten as a professional up to that point. It stunned me. I remember the client left, we wrapped up, it was great. I sat down and I'm like, the whole world is surreal right now. And it was so cool because it was like, this is real. This is real. And it was a woman came through, her grandmother. I love grandmothers, don't you? But there was another grandmother. The grandmother came through and was holding this little white fluffy dog and feeding the dog green beans in spirit form. And I'm like, well, in my head, I'm thinking this is going to sound absolutely crazy, but I'm going to tell this woman. And I said, this is what I see. And the client said, yep, that was the snack that my grandmother gave her dog. And I'm like, I remember just being stunned at like how much we can access. And I was deeply humbled, put it that way, instantly. Like, I remember for weeks after that saying to my guides, what do you want me to do? I'll do anything. What do you need? How can I help? Where can I go? It was just really cool.
It is cool. And it's neat when, you know, because I'll do that with clients. It's like I'm getting information coming through, but I don't necessarily know what the heck it means. But I'm like, I'm going to just throw this out there and share it with you because it's
Yes.
coming through, and they're like, oh, you know, and to see the validation on their face, or for them to tell me that, you know, this is the reason why you're seeing that. It's just really cool. And so, Isabeau, how do you see the deceased? I'm curious. I like to ask all different types of intuitives how, you know, how do your abilities come through?
For me, I see outside of myself. And also if I close my eyes, I don't see. And people ask all the time, should I have my eyes open or closed? You got to try both, because your intuition is also going to parallel your personality and your quirks. So, and that's some of the teaching in the Sage method, is how to kind of understand that. But for me, my personality is, if I close my eyes, I shut everything out. And so I see outside of myself. They're typically about 3 or 4 feet away. And usually, I mean, 15 to 20% solid. Mostly, I don't see them like it shows in the movies where it's like, oh, it's perfection. And when I
They're
see
like kind of
images,
see-through then, kind of transparent a little bit.
very transparent, very, very transparent, as a matter of fact. It's almost like when it for many times it starts like when you see a heat pattern on a road, that like translucent sort of heat pattern. Imagine that in the shape of a person. That's when I know someone's near me. And it's not until I turn in that direction and allow my eyes to defocus that I can start to see more details about them. So it's not that I've just got a full on person solid standing next to me chatting, you know. It's definitely they make themselves aware that way. When I run into people that are stuck in the in between that do need assistance crossing over, because that's a big part of my job, they do many times look more solid than that because they're a lot more anchored in still to this human world. But it varies, you know. And there's been 2 or 3 times in the last 20 years that I've seen someone fully solid, and they really surprised me. And I was like, wow, I would not have known you were deceased, except you just disappeared in front of me. But I
Wow. So
wouldn't have known.
do they know you see them? Do they pick up on
Yes.
that? They do.
Yeah.
Okay.
They all know that I can see them. I've never ever run into a situation where somebody that I can remember that somebody didn't know I could see them. So
That's interesting. And I don't see them. I can see them when I close my eyes sometimes if I really focus, but I feel them almost like you know, something on my shoulder or just a presence. My ear will go "Ring" when something is
Yeah.
right there. And then
Yep.
I'll put my hand out and I could potentially feel tingles or heat, or I can listen and I'll say telepathically, who's here with me? Oh, it's me. I'm Betty. And oh, okay. This happened to me
Yeah.
at a restaurant one time. I went to go meet two friends who were not into any of this, and we were having some dinner, and I sit down. They had already gotten there before me. I sit down and I immediately feel a presence next to me. And I'm like, oh boy, who's here? You know, so they're having a conversation. My real physical friends are having a conversation while I in my head am having a conversation with this earthbound spirit, you know. And she comes through and I'm asking questions, and in my mind's eye, I'm seeing her. She's dressed in a colonial kind of, you know, the white tufted sort of neck and a black, you know, it was kind of Amish colonial looking, I guess, if you were trying to visualize it. And I could see that in my mind. She has a bun in her hair, and I hear her name was Betty, you know. So,
Yeah.
and the funny thing is, the manager or the owner of the restaurant walks up because he knew one of my friends and says, how you ladies doing? And we just start chatting. He goes, well, if you want to stick around, we have a paranormal investigator coming tonight. And I said, you're kidding me. I
Yep.
said, is there a gal named Betty? You know, do you know anything about a gal? And he goes, yeah, she's the woman who died in the lake, who drowned in the lake, which was right across the street. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll be staying for this paranormal investigation because
There it
she's
is.
already communicating with me to help her cross over. And so, but I did see her very visually in my mind's eye. Now, I did
Yeah.
not see her physically like you would have. You probably could have been sitting there with me and said, oh, here comes a woman walking up, and I would have been feeling it, you know, while you were seeing it. So it's
That's
neat
such a
how we have
great,
very different senses. Mhm.
isn't that great to really kind of express, because it is different for everyone. And sometimes people will, you know, think that oh, Bo's a professional and she's, you know, doing this, so she must see as if it's a perfect movie. And I tell people too, like when I see visions of like images or a vision of a scene playing out, it's very dim.
Mhm.
It's very shaded. It's not sharp. It's not in Technicolor. It's not, you know, it's not bright as if I'm watching a television screen. And so it's, I worry sometimes when too many, you know, people are out there saying, I see perfectly. Well, yeah, but most of us, you know, we have to understand that it's going to come through subtly, and it might come through subtly permanently. It's a matter of learning when to trust it, when not to. And I love what you said about like, you can feel and you can like, you know, sense like that. Same with me. For me, I can get very distracted. Like I'd go to a restaurant like that and I would be so
It's
distracted into the
overwhelming. Yeah.
menu, right? For me, it's a pull where I kind of feel like if a spirit's trying to get my attention, I go spacey. You know that, like when you're having a
I do
conversation
too.
with someone and all of a sudden, yeah, all of a sudden
I
you're
tune out
like,
of what's going on in my reality.
yeah, what was I saying? What was just going on in front of us? That's what happens to me if a spirit's pulling on me. I just sort of go. And I remember raising my kids. I didn't necessarily raise them like with a lot of paranormal stuff. It was a very, you know, kind of typical, but I remember having to teach them that when mom says mom needs a minute, she just needs to kind of space for a second, and they knew why. But you know, I'm being pulled away from this focus for just a second. Okay, I'm back.
So funny because they'll nag at you because they know.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, this happened to me. I was at Letchworth State Park in Western New York. I'd gone to I think it was Letchworth, or no, it was another one. It was a state park in Western New York, and I was just walking around by myself. Well, I got to an old military cemetery, and immediately I was just hearing voices like crazy, like, hello, you can help me. And I'm like, whoa. You know, I literally stopped. I probably look crazy because I was just flailing my arms in the middle of a cemetery by myself, you know, And I was like, whoa, everyone be quiet. And I found there's a statue of Jesus there. And I just sat next to it and his hands were up.
Yep.
And I just sat there and said, all right, who needs assistance? Like, who needs help crossing over? And so then I just called in the light and crossed over who was open to it and who wasn't. I just did this the other day here locally at another military site. I taught my friend how to do this. And so it's funny though, because they'll just start chatting it up. And then I hear all of their whole story, and they just really want to share what happened to them. And once they do, it's like, okay, let that earthly story go and go on to your next.
It's part of the job. Yeah, exactly. It's part of the pattern. And the people that are in my life know, on a rare occasion, it's not every single day, but maybe once a week, they know that if I just say, hey, I just need a second, they get it, they understand, and then I can focus in on what I need to do spiritually, and then kind of come back to the human existence and experience. And the spirituality is getting stronger. The spiritual awakening that's been happening over the last couple of years, I mentioned earlier, about 2023, and
let's
how
talk about that.
How significant this year is. Every year, the beginning of the year, I'll sit down with my main guide. His name is Peter, and I'll sit down with him and say, what's going on this year? Like what can I expect? And I got to tell you, the last couple of years were not really roses and butterflies,
which we saw.
So it was like, it was like, okay, and that's fair. It's pretty much almost everyone has gone through this spiritual awakening that's been happening. It's been going on for about, I want to say about 5, 6, 7 years. And it's the best way I can explain it to people is as if there is a bucket of water, and a few years back, that bucket of water got shook, and all the mud and all the gunk that was settled, hidden on the bottom, came up to the top. And now you have a muddy bucket of water, and every person on this planet has been invited to decide what the heck they want to do with their muddy bucket of water. And this is the spiritual awakening. And many people are choosing to clean that water and to live and thrive in the bliss of clean water. Some people are choosing to keep their water muddy. There's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. This is just who's raising their vibration in this spiritual awakening and who's not. So fast forward to this year. This year, it's as if some of that has settled. It's not even settled, because I don't want to stick that with the bucket analogy, but our new human patterns have sunk in. We order different, work different, live different, interact different. People are finally acknowledging their uniqueness in their mental health and all of these types of things. And that has settled more so into place than ever before. Now, this year, manifesting is 100 times stronger than it was 2022 or earlier. Because everyone that has been cleaning their bucket, doing the inner work, wanting to grow, wanting to express themselves, wanting to be more of their authentic selves, all of these people now have access to massive amounts of manifesting energy, because universe, source, there's people all over the globe, all walks of life, all religions, all spiritual paths. You all have your own term for it.
I call it ice cream. There's different flavors.
Whatever your term is for it, I'll use universe in general. The universe has millions more opportunities to bring you that one thing that you were asking for than it did before. It is not limited like it was in the previous years. And
we don't have the resistance like we used to either.
Yes, we don't have the resistance, and all of that inner work has opened up, whether you know it or not, it's opened up that inner channel and that spiritual channel. And so manifesting is off the charts this year. And I tell people, dive in, manifest.
And make sure you know where your thoughts are focused, right? Because if you're manifesting complaining and negativity, it's going to come in just as fast as positivity and good things, right?
Yeah, let me tell you, if you're manifesting road bumps on a travel plan, you're going to get them. I'm saying that from experience. And then I had to shift it myself and go, okay, everything always works out for me. And then lo and behold, it did. I was like, okay, all right, we're back
I
on
told my
track.
sister that. I said, you better stop. I said, years before you could watch serial killer shows, but you better stop because this year is a high manifestation year and you want to start focusing on more positive programs that you're watching on TV.
Oh, that's too funny. I'll keep you posted because I'm still watching the serial killer movies. I can't help it. I'm fascinated by them, but in general, the saying what you want, I mean, this is pretty much what we've talked about for this whole section, which is really delicious if you think about it. In the morning, when you're getting ready, look in that mirror and decide what you want. Say it out loud. Acknowledge that you're a spiritual being. Even if you did that small of a step every single day, you're gonna start to see things shift. Now,
I even write it on a little index card. I've got mine.
yes, right. Yep, exactly. To be able to say it each day or hang it right up on that bathroom mirror each morning. But we're still going to have human experiences. And that is one thing that I always like to tell people is the bad's not going to go away.
Yeah.
But it's going to be way easier to handle. And actually, so I'll wrap up with a really fun story. As far as this manifesting 2023, I'll wrap up with a really fun story. When it comes to being in the flow intuitively, acknowledging you're a spiritual being on your spiritual path every morning, kind of, or once a day, it's so awesome because, like I said, things are still going to happen to you, but not as bad. I years ago was driving like a 1983 Saab. I was in love with this car. I had carpet on the inside ceiling of it. I was just like, I full on went out with this car, and I had this rock solid belief that the car never broke down. And for a year, it didn't. It ran like a champ. So I'm going to an appointment. I stop at a stoplight. All of a sudden, I hear the voice come up saying the car's going to break down. Now, this goes against my feelings on this car.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I went, that's intuition, not imagination. Look out my window. There is a mechanic at this light. So I take a right and I pull into the mechanic parking lot. Pulled into a parking spot. The car literally died when I pulled into the spot. And I was like, no way. No way. You can't make this up. I go in, they check it out. They're like, it was a little piece of plastic. That'll be $2.40. I don't even know if they even charged me. They're like, have a nice day.
It was $2.73.
Yeah, exactly. $2.73. And, have a nice day. I was like 4 minutes late to my appointment. I didn't have to get it towed or pushed out of the road so the car was going to break down. That was in my plan. It was in my pattern. The bad stuff's going to happen, but it's not going to be as difficult to navigate through when you're in the flow. So if there's one thing that I tell people, just acknowledge your spiritual path daily if you can, because it'll help overall in the long run.
It will. And I love that story, Isabeau, because, your intuition came through really strongly. And the more that we work with it, the stronger we have that sense of, ooh, I'm going to listen to this. This is coming through really strong. So this has been a super fun show. I'm so glad that we finally got to connect. I know we were out of alignment there for a little bit. I was like, well, we'll align when it's meant to align. And we just had an amazing show. And so how can people connect with you and learn more about all of the amazing programs that you have?
For me, I keep everything in one spot. I keep everything on the website. It's The Sage Method. So THESAGE method, METHOD.com.
Great. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show today. This was so fun. And thank you for the energy that you're putting out into the world. And thank you for being really candid today about your experiences. And I think that's awesome because, we aren't here to sugarcoat anything. This is where we're at. And we're all going through this. This isn't like
we're in it together.
Isabeau and I are some, enlightened people coming down telling everybody, hey, this is how it's going to be. We're going through this just as much as everyone else is. And yeah, we can share some tips and tools that work for us, and maybe they'll work for you too. And so we shared a lot of tips and tools today. And again, I thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You deserve to navigate your life in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT tapping, and the emotion code, visit my website at www.theexistentialempath.com.